Hello, everyone. This is Greg Jevinson, editor-in-chief at Rider Magazine, and your host for the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. Our guest today is Greg Rice. Greg is a long-distance rider who has logged more than 783,000 miles on motorcycles. He's a member of the Iron Butt Association and has completed nearly 200,000 miles on IBA-certified rides. Greg has ridden nearly 50,000 miles in Iron Butt rallies, and he has completed 70 Bun Burner Gold rides. On each one, he rode at more than 1,500 miles in 24 hours. Stay tuned for our discussion with this long-distance rider. Greg, welcome to the show.
Hi, Greg. Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So you're in Fort Lauderdale, is that correct?
Yep, South Florida, Fort Lauderdale. Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm out in California, so we're both enjoying a pretty mild winter day. So you and I have connected in the past because I came across you on Facebook. I'd read about some of the rides that you've done. You're a long distance rider. You like to put lots and lots of miles on motorcycles, and you've been doing it for a long time. So, but you started doing these rides long before you had a connection with the Iron Butt Association, which many people are familiar with. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in motorcycling and then putting on lots of miles.
Okay. My father was a Shriner and rode the Harley Davidson Selector Glides and parades and did all those kind of things. And so it started to interest me. I rode a few times with him. And then I joined the military, and money was short, so a motorcycle was something I could afford at the time, right? So I started riding long distance back in the day because I didn't have a lot of money to stay at hotels. So I was stationed at Great Lakes Naval Base in Chicago, and my family lived in South Florida. So I would ride nonstop to 1,300 miles from the base up there to Miami, mainly because I didn't have money to stay in a hotel and stuff, right? And so I started learning riding long distance on a Kawasaki KZ650 with a National Cycle windscreen on it. They were in Chicago area, so I went to their factory one time, picked up a screen. I had a sissy bar. I had a tank bag with a CB radio and an 8-track player.
Yeah, that's definitely going back a ways.
Yeah, and I started riding, and I really liked it, and I found that I didn't like to stop. I didn't have the money back in the day for a lot of hotels, stuff being in the military and the pay that we got back then, and I just realized that, wow, that's something I really like to do. So I kept doing it, and once I got out of the military, I'm a disabled veteran. I got out. I got in law enforcement, and I was a deputy sheriff in Florida, in South Florida, lived in Key West, and was Monroe County deputy sheriff, and rode some with the department. Then we had some motorcycles and stuff. And then I ended up with a government agency and went to Japan for 5 years.
Wow.
And got associated with the motorcycle groups and stuff around there. A local Honda motorcycle shop started sponsoring me, kind of, and including me. Did some print ad commercials and stuff for them, sitting on motorcycles I had a leather suit and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And we used to do rides all over Japan. We had a couple rides a year that were nonstop rides where we go 24 hours. And so I was still doing that. I became the president of the motorcycle club at the local community there back then, and just kept riding. Because I was a government employee, I was able to buy motorcycles from on base through the exchanges, and they would ship them to my house, and I would get them in a crate and take them, assemble them, take them out to the local shop, and they would certify them for warranty. And I shipped a couple of them back when I came back to the States. Back in the government shipped all that stuff for free for you, right? So, and I kept doing it. Got married, had a couple children, kind of slowed down a little bit, did a little more different things, some boating and stuff, so more inclusive with the family, obviously, and things like that. And,
sure.
And then kept waiting to get back into it, pretty strong. And then once my kids and stuff became a little more older and self-sufficient, didn't want to go hang out with mom and dad on the boat and stuff like that. I got back into doing long distance and got hooked up with the IBA, the Iron Butt Association.
So the Iron Butt Association, the early 2000s, I think I read on your website.
Yeah, I think my first ride with them was 2002. Yeah.
Okay. And, most people are probably familiar with the Iron Butt Association. At least a lot of people are familiar with their sort of, entry level certified ride, the Saddle Sore 1000. It's riding at least 1,000 miles in 24 hours. There are many, many, many other certified rides out there. There's the Iron Butt Rally. But yeah, I imagine you found your tribe with the IBA.
Yeah, I'm known for doing a ride, and then when I get there, say, okay, let's go back. I like to see stuff along the way. And early on, I had cameras and video on my bikes and stuff like that. And in fact, I'm getting ready to do some more of that again. But it's more just the riding. And so I started equipping my motorcycle so I could go long distance and not have to stop a lot, and mainly do it safely, right? Because you always want to get back home, right? So.
Sure. Well, I mean, as with the IBA, I know that they have fairly strict guidelines for having their rides to be certified. You've got to have documentation for your starting and ending, and gas receipts, and other documentation, so that it can be officially certified. I'd read on your website that you said that you've been successful in every one of your IBA certified ride attempts, and I know you've done at least 70 bun burner golds, which is more than 1,500 miles in 24 hours. So that's certainly it's another 500 miles more than your standard saddle sore. So what do you do to make sure that it's successful?
I'm a big planner, and I don't just wake up, say I'm going to go do a ride. Right? I think about them, I plan them, I route them out. I go to sleep at night walking through the route in my mind. Every turn I'm going to make on that ride. Right. I make sure my motorcycle's ready to go all the time. I do my own maintenance. And I take care of the servicing, and I do all the things, including valve checks, everything. Right? I don't just change the oil and think it's good to go. Right. So the planning around it, I found, always makes it successful for me. And that's a big part of the fun for me, is all the planning around it and searching for gas stations along the way. And a lot of times I'll if I think it's going to be a really good ride for me, I'll build a web page about it and all the information, including my planned route and things like that. And then I have a satellite tracking device from Spot, and use Spotwalla. And I'll put that up, and I'll post up, and a lot of people, for whatever reason, want to follow along with me and stuff. So the planning around it, and just the enjoyment of it, right? There's something about it that I just enjoy out there, that I can just go forever and not need to stop. Right? I stop for gas, go to the restroom, bio breaks. I eat and drink on the bike. I'm all set up with that. I have all my GPSs and communications all plumbed into my headset, so I don't have to take my eyes off the road. I do a lot of voice command stuff with my GPSs. Back in the day, I used to open Garmin GPSs and hotwire the microphone and speakers and integrate them into my headsets, so I could, do voice commands and things that
Sure.
they didn't offer back in the day, right, and stuff. So yeah, it's really the planning, and then just really, I really enjoy it. I mean, I can just go.
Well, I've done some long rides. I've only got one Saddle Sore 1000 certified under my belt. I've gotten close a couple of times, and I enjoy riding solo. I also like just putting long miles on the bike. I typically don't have music playing or anything like that, and so especially since you've done so many of these. I mean, again, doing one bun burner gold is a big accomplishment for a lot of people, but you've done 70 of them. What is it that you enjoy about doing them again and again and again? I mean, I imagine maybe you take some different routes, but what is it about those long hours on the bike that you enjoy so much?
Um, when I started doing those, I think the first one I did was like 2003, and it was like, wow, I can do that. And then I can ride coast to coast basically in a day and a half, right, by doing 1,500 plus mile days, right? And in my mind, there's just something about being able to do those kind of things and events, and be able to cover so much ground. And then it is the enjoyment of, I do see a lot, and I'm constantly paying attention and looking at this and looking at that, and trying to identify what traffic's doing and stuff, and those things. And it just enjoys it. I've done as many as 4 of them back to back to back to back, right?
Wow.
6,000 plus miles in less than 4 days, right? And there's that challenge too. Once you start, that then you've got a challenge, and then I've got a lot of other people now who are constantly challenging me to continue, right? So
Yeah.
so it's
And so you've also participated in some iron butt rallies. Those are
I've ridden in 5 and paid for 7.
paid for
And
7.
yeah, so I've been fortunate to be selected many times since 2009 was my first iron butt rally. And I think I finished around 34th, 35th at that time. And I really love the challenge, the competition. It's against you, and then it also is against other people, and being able to come out with the planning and the routing and things. So my best in that is I finished 9th in 2013 Iron Butt Rally,
Right
and
on.
I've done pretty well with those. Yeah.
Yeah, for people that don't know, I mean, an iron butt rally is it's 11 consecutive days, and you're typically logging more than well over 1,000 miles on every one of those days. So it's a major undertaking, and it's also it's by invitation only. Is that correct?
Invitation only, and it's a little bit of an expense involved with it,
Sure.
and time, right? Because you got to be there a few days prior to. There's inspections. There's all kind of processes that happen the few days leading up to the start. And then, the banquet after, and, after you've ridden, 11, 12,000 miles in 11 days, you usually need a day or two to relax before you start that ride home. I mean, one time we ended in Spokane, Washington. I was in South Florida. It was a 3,200-mile ride home just to get back after doing 11 days of 11,000 plus miles, right?
Right,
So,
right. Well, you had mentioned, you've been in the military, and then you were in law enforcement. What sort of career has allowed you to block out so much time for some of these rides and rallies and so forth? Do you work for yourself or something?
no, I'm in IT now and have been for the last year. Work for a company. What I would do is I would get off work Friday afternoon, and from South Florida, I would ride to Illinois for lunch on the weekend and back. I went from Fort Lauderdale to Mexico and back on a weekend, right?
Wow.
So I started doing all those kind of things. And then here and there, I would take a Friday or a Monday, or a few other days. The Iron Butt Rally is a 2-week investment. So,
Sure.
you have to, part of the time in 2009 and in 2011 and 13, I did work for myself. Since then, I've been as an employee. In 2009, hopefully my wife's not listening, they wouldn't let me have the time off. So I quit. You don't want to know what I quit, but I quit to go participate in that rally,
Oh,
right? So,
well, hey, that's an honor. It's like, like say, since it's every other year an invitation only, it's not an opportunity that people would want to pass up. So,
no, it's
um,
it's an experience that is really amazing, especially if you're doing it to challenge yourself and just being able to keep going and that planning. Because come day 6, 7, 8, and 9, it's really gets to be
yeah,
hard, right? And
yeah.
just to have that willpower, motivation, whatever, to keep driving and and to do well, right? So.
Well, and for what, for some people that may not be familiar with how the Iron Butt Rally works, is that, and you would know better than I have not participated in one, but is that there are points that can be earned by achieving certain destinations. It's somewhat of a scavenger hunt in certain ways.
It is. It
But
is. It's a nationwide North American scavenger. That's really what it is. Yep.
and so there can be very high value bonus points, but they can be like ridiculously far away. And but the whole idea is by the end of the rally, you have accumulated the highest number of points. So it's very strategic how you plan. Not everybody's going to do, it's not like everybody's following the same route. Everybody's got their own options for where they go and how they get there, and trying to accumulate points. So I imagine and again, you've got to ride all those miles. So you've got to continue to think strategically as well as log lots of miles. So that sounds like a very demanding challenge.
Yeah. I have a software program I developed back in like 2010 that now many people use. It's basically spreadsheet that integrates a lot of functionality and functions that help you do all the planning and getting ready and stuff like that. And the top couple winners in the last past IBRs have used my software now.
Oh,
And it's on
that's
my
cool.
website on there. And that helps me because, like I say, for me, planning is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I plan out months and months and months. And I have a motorcycle, a checklist of stuff I make sure I have with me when I go. I want to be self-sufficient on the road. I have tire compressors, tire repair kits, all kinds of tools that I've never used, thankfully. But so once you plan well and you know how to get what you want to do, then it's about being able to ride what your plan is doing, right? So.
Right. Well, isn't that kind of a mantra of long distance rider? Or the IBA is sort of plan the ride and ride the plan.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And then having that ability to adapt if you need to, right? Weather, sometimes I've had fires close roads, weather, tropical storms, and because we do the rally in the summer, and sometimes there's weather, that makes you go different places. So then you got to be able to adapt and adjust. But it's basically have a good plan and go ride that plan. Yeah.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about the bikes that you've ridden over the years. I know, on your website, and you and I have communicated in the past, you've had ridden Gold Wings. I think you've ridden some BMWs,
Yep.
Yamaha
Yep.
FJR. I mean, so what
Yep.
kind of bikes have you ridden over the years?
I started way back in the day with 650s, Honda. I had one of the first Honda 504s way back in the 70s. But I started getting to where I wanted to have low maintenance motorcycles because I was doing a lot of miles, and usually I was averaging about 50,000 miles a year.
Wow.
So I started looking, and Gold Wings was like the bike that needs the least amount of maintenance. You can ride that bike for 50,000 miles and not even touch it if you wanted to, right? And so I started riding those in 2003, 2002, and I bought 8 of them.
Wow.
So much so that I know the marketing people at Honda out in California, Torrance out there, right? We communicate and stuff like that. And I got very comfortable and good with those. But I found that in the Iron Butt Rally, come day 8 and 9, that bike becomes very heavy because
Okay.
sometimes there's off-road riding involved and up mountain roads and lots of twisties sometimes, depending on where the best bonus points are to go after, right? And so I changed in 2016 to a BMW RT. And I found that to be a really nice motorcycle. I was a little leery about them because they'd had some final drive issues in the past, and the Iron Butt Association had kind of pointed it out in the previous rallies where there was a 20% failure of BMWs at one point. Right. Those, and they fixed the problem in 13. I went with the RT. I really loved it. But then Honda came out with the new 2018 Goldwing redesigned. Right. They invited me out to the release out in Texas they had near Austin. Mm-hmm. I went to there, and next thing you know, I bought one. So I sold my RT and bought that new 2018 Goldwing. And in my mind, it just wasn't what it was. I'd ridden about 500,000 miles on Goldwings on all the previous ones that I had. And it just didn't have the same weather protection and many other things, right? It was in between an ST 1300 and a Goldwing, right? The way they had designed it. And so I kept that for about a year. And I decided I wanted to go back to BMW, and I bought a BMW GSA. And that's what I'm riding today. I had an FJR in between 2 GSAs, put 40,000 miles and about 10 months on it. It just didn't feel big enough for me. It was a great motorcycle. It's bulletproof. You can ride that thing hard as you want, as long as you want, like a Goldwing. It's a very bulletproof motorcycle. I'm trying to expand my riding a little bit more dirt gravel type riding. Our house in the mountains is on a dirt gravel road up and down a pretty steep hill and stuff. And it's supposed to, be better. I haven't gotten great at it yet. So, so now I'm riding the BMW GSA. It's a pretty much all-purpose motorcycle.
Sure.
Other than the Goldwing, it has the best seating position you can have. I've got a couple risers set up on it, and so I sit upright. I've got a custom seat with Russell, and it makes me very comfortable riding.
Right. Well, I mean, with the GSA, since it's the adventure model, it's got taller suspension, so the seat is higher. If you can accommodate the seat height, if you can adapt to that with your, inseam and leg length, I know then it's got an 8-gallon tank, so it's got, as far as its stock configuration's got a lot of range. So, and that's one of the questions I have is, you've owned many Goldwings, you've owned an FJR, you've owned an RT, or you've owned some GSAs. What sort of modifications do you do some of these bikes? I know some long distance riders add auxiliary tanks. Clearly they often, I mean, not just talking about navigational equipment, but lighting, other sorts of things like that, things to make it more comfortable. What sort of modifications do you often do?
I go to the extreme. I have auxiliary tank. I have multiple types of auxiliary lighting. I integrate a lot of electronics. I want to hear everything in my headset.
Sure.
So I've developed audio circuits, mixers that allow me to mix in 4 or 5 different items, multiple GPSs, radar detectors, other things. I have a thermal imaging camera. Excuse me. And I develop electronics. So now I have a mixer that allows me to include 5 devices, some Bluetooth and some other. So I can plumb all that into my headset so I can hear everything in that. So I have what we call hydration system, which was a 1 gallon jug that I've got a design for, mounted on the passenger peg so I can drink. I have a bag that I carry my food with so I can eat. And then I use custom windscreens. I have right now a Yamaha FJR touring windscreen on my GSA. And, it looks a little funny, but I'm looking for the most wind weather protection for long distance riding and also more quiet.
Yeah.
Because I found that the quieter the motorcycle, the less my mind is trying to process the sound, the less tired I am at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
So, and then I have like a laminar lip type technology also there to help deflect air over and reduce the buffeting sound. Another thing I found with Goldwings way back in the day is where the forks come up and what we call the tunnel, where the forks come up to meet the handlebars. That's a big wide opening. You'd be shocked at how much dirt, dust, rain, water, snow that comes up through that opening. Back in about 2003, I started cutting up foam and filling in that tunnel. And the noise that blocks and the dirt and the dust that blocks is crazy. I wear a high-vis jacket from Aerostitch. Mm-hmm. And before I started doing those things get dirty quick.
They do.
But when I fill in that foam, the sound noise is way down. The dirt and dust that blows up through there. So I do a tremendous amount of modifications to my motorcycle. And it's all about being safe and comfortable. The more comfortable you are, the longer you can go. And then the more safe you are, you're going to make it back, right? So some people think it's a little bit much, but it's important for me to be able to hear everything so I can keep my eyes on the road, my hands on the handlebars, and be able to do a lot of voice stuff, commands and things like that. And then to be as comfortable as I can.
Sure. Well, I don't think some people, unless they've seen them firsthand, can quite appreciate the level of adaptation and modification that goes into, an iron butt rally competition bike in terms of, like you said, all the navigation, the lights and so forth, the auxiliary fuel tank, the ability to stay hydrated. They're look almost, some of them can be almost unrecognizable at times. It doesn't look like the stock bike, but it's about functionality. It's not about what some people call about farkles, where they're functional, sparkly, whatever it may be, is that some of those are just for bolt-ons. But I know it sounds like in your case, especially since you're very technically inclined, you've engineered some of your own solutions, is that you wouldn't put anything on your bike if it's not going to help it, as you said, help you be safe, more visible, more comfortable, all that stuff. It's got to have a functional purpose, for it.
Yeah. No chrome for me.
No chrome. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's just one more thing to keep clean. So what I'm also curious about is, since you're, you're starting from South Florida for some of your rides. I know you say you have a house up in the Carolinas, in the mountains. But you're able to ride year round in South Florida, like I am. Yes. in California. I realize that not every part of the country can you ride year round, but what do you do to deal with some of the weather challenges, whether it's rain? You mentioned wildfires. I know where I am in Southern California, anytime in the summer, I've got to go across the Mojave Desert. It's typically 105, 110 degrees for hours at a time. So how do you deal with the extreme weather that you encounter?
Well, I wear Aerostitch gear, 81 pants and the Darien jacket, no matter what. I've been in Death Valley. It's 121 degrees in my Aerostitch gear, and it was crazy. But and then I wear LD Comfort gear underneath me by Mario, right, from LD Comfort. And that's some really great moisture wicking that really works well in the summertime. And there's some techniques that we've learned about putting a little water on you, open your jacket sleeves open and kind of let air blow through.
Sure.
It's like an air conditioner when it's really hot out. Having done a lot of riding out of South Florida, I've gotten used to humidity and wearing the gear. So when it gets up to 90, I'm just normal, everyday, comfortable. And And then when I get out of South Florida, the humidity is a lot lower. 90 is not as hot as it is in South Florida when it's high humidity.
Right,
Also.
right.
And then in the winter, I have warm and safe electric gear, gloves, jacket, pants, and socks. And I can ride down into the teens as long as there's no ice and stuff. I've been in snowstorms. Even when I went to Alaska in June, one time it was 21 degrees. I went to southern Mexico a couple of years ago, and who would have thought? Up in the mountains outside of Monterey, it was 21 degrees there, and
Wow.
in Mexico, right? And so I have all the heated gear with remote thermostats, and you can pretty much dial those in. And like I say, down into the low 20s, you can, because I use all the weather wind blocking techniques.
Right.
I have some products from Airflow that help deflect air off and around me on my GSA. And then the big windscreen that I have, that really goes a long ways. I have oversized hand guards for my hand and then heat grips, and that goes a long ways to keeping you warm, even in low temperatures.
Right. Right. Yeah. Those kinds of things make a big difference. I mean, even motorcycles that come with their own heated grips or seats or something. And, but anything you can do to keep more of that wind chill off of you in the cold. I know whenever I'm riding, when it's really hot, and again, since I'm in Southern California and typically riding in the desert Southwest, when it's hot, it's extremely dry. So I've got to stay hydrated. I've used cooling vests, that you soak and they hold in a lot of moisture, and as they evaporate over time, especially with mesh gear, that can help keep you cool. And it's really about just keeping your body in the wintertime, you got to keep your core warm. In the summertime, you got to keep your core cool, just so your body can regulate itself and again keep you safe and keep you focused on the ride. So
yeah, it's key pieces of things to do, and it's all around the planning and trying, experimenting, and finding because what works for me may not always work for everybody else.
Right.
But the more comfortable you are, weather-wise, the safer you're going to be out there too, right? So.
Well, and the thing is that applies for anybody that's going on some long distance trips, even if they're not trying to do, iron butt certified rides. If they're just going to go on a long trip and maybe they've never ridden cross country before, or they've only got so many days and they're trying to, go see a particular national park. You're going to put, 4, 5, 6, 700 miles on your bike. You ought to be prepared for, like I said, look ahead for the weather, but bring some rain gear if or bring whatever you can, so that you're not gonna, if you get cold and wet, or if you get caught out in a storm or something, it can really ruin a ride.
It just sucks, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
It just be prepared, know ahead, right? I have weather radar on my motorcycle, so I have 2 devices that give me the radar to look up ahead. And people, well, why do you need that? Well, I just want to be prepared. I'm not going to stop. The weather doesn't make me turn around and stop, but it makes sure I'm prepared to be that way, right?
Right,
And
right.
so that you are comfortable, because it's no fun riding in the cold and rain and stuff like that. You're just uncomfortable, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and another thing you mentioned that you're very prepared. You do all the maintenance on your own motorcycles, which is probably the exception rather than the rule these days. Motorcycles are very complicated. You clearly do a lot of your own engineering with your electronics and so forth. But what do you bring with you to prepare yourself for, like, the most common, breakdown issue would be a flat tire? I know that's probably happened to most of us, or many of us. I know with tubeless tires on cast wheels, if you've got a plug kit and a way to reinflate your tire, it can just be a minor inconvenience. But you have other things that you do to stay prepared on the road?
I have the tire compressor. I have 3 different types of tire repair kits, depending on what type of hole. And I practice that. I have a no more tire changer at my house in North Carolina. So I'll take old tires and I'll practice plugging them and stuff like that. Knock on wood, I haven't had a flat on the road since 2008.
Wow.
So yeah, that's when I'm knocking on wood over here. But I carry also a lot of those. I carry a little voltmeter for electronics. So I have a lot of electronics on my motorcycle, right? And I want to be prepared for that. I carry a little extra wires, some wire strippers, wire connectors, things like that, to be able to, change some wires. I've had a couple times something, a wire got pulled loose for some reason. Maybe I had it too tight and hit a big bump, and the suspension, spread out and, stretched the wire and pulled it loose, something like that. Obviously, the normal tools and pliers and those things. I carry some small sockets. I'm way over. I've never broke down on the road. The last time I had anything was a flat in 2008. And but I want to be self-prepared, ready to something like when I had a Gold Wings, I carried a number 19 socket because that was a lug nut for the rear wheel,
Right.
and an extension to where I could get enough leverage on it if I needed to take the wheel off. Because on a Gold Wing, if you know what you're doing, you lay it on the side and you take the wheel off. So, and you could get a car ride somewhere if you had to, get a tire put on and bring it back and put it back on with just carrying those sockets and stuff, right? And just to be self-sufficient as much as possible. So if you do break down, you can find a way to get yourself back on the road, right? So.
Absolutely. Well, and for somebody like you that puts logs as many miles, you said that you easily put 50,000 miles on in a year on a motorcycle. You must go through a lot of tires.
I do, and it can be an issue because I may have 4,000 or 5,000 miles on a tire, but I'm getting ready to do a 10,000 mile ride, so I got to take those off. Until I had my own tire changer, I had a couple relationships with the local shops, and they offered me some really nice deals, $20 a piece to mount tires for it. Right?
Sure.
So I'll take them off and change them, and sometimes I'm through 5 sets in a year, right? And so I try to, be frugal with my money. I'll order online and take the tires, and somebody pay them $20 and they mount them for me and stuff like that. At my house, I think I have 2 sets ready to go for me. I try to be, because I never know, sometimes something comes up and I'm going to have some free time and I can plan out a ride and I need to change the tires and things like that, right? So I go out sometimes 5 sets a year of tires. So.
Wow. So have you ever crossed over to the dark side?
Unfortunately, I'm one of the instigators. I did it on my Gold Wing in 2005, and to be honest with you, there's no difference. A stock Gold Wing tire has a 180 width.
Yeah.
I run a 195 on Gold Wings. There was barely any difference. I could run flats. So when I go to Mexico, Alaska or Mexico, I could use run flats just in case. Never had a problem. But and then when I went to the BMW RT, nobody had ever put a car tire on one of those. But you can't get more than 10,000 miles out of a rear tire on those things. And competing in the Iron Butt Rally, you need more than that. So I had a guy devise a wheel spacer, aluminum wheel spacer, that because where the swing arm is, single-sided swing arm on an RT, if you put too much bigger tire, the tire would touch the swing arm.
Right.
So I had somebody develop me a 3/4 inch spacer to move the wheel off so that then I could mount a car tire. So I mounted a car tire on a BMW RT, and after a couple hundred miles of riding that thing, I was dragging my elbows on it. Not just my foot pegs, but it was amazing how well that bike handled that. When I went to the FJR, I had a car tire on that before I had my permanent tag. I still had the temporary tag when I went to a car tire on it. The geometry on that isn't as good as it is on an RT for a car tire.
Right.
So I ran about 30,000 miles on that, and then I went back to a motorcycle tire, but instead of a 180, I went with a 190 because I was looking for a little more height off the road. And just, I like to have more contact patch of rubber touch. I found that with the bigger the tire, the more contact patch, the quicker I stop, and the better traction I have in the rain.
Yeah.
And along with longer tire life.
Yeah.
And on my Gold Wings and my RT, I already told everybody. Also, it's nice that when I pull up to stop, I don't have to put my feet down with a car tire.
Exactly. Awesome.
They look at me for a
I've
second.
always wondered because so our one of our columnists, Eric Trow, wrote an article years ago, and it's been more than 10 years now, about dark side and putting car tires on motorcycles, and and his take was was more on the side of the dynamics of a motorcycle tire and safety and so forth. But I've never had the experience. Is that can you notice a difference? I mean, again, you think of a squared off profile on a car tire versus the rounded profile of a motorcycle. Does it feel pretty awkward?
It would, I'd say about the first 100 miles, you a little more pressure on your handlebars to get over. I'm not a real knee dragger. I like to ride in the mountains and the curves, but I'm not a knee dragger.
Yeah.
I go a little fast, but it's just a little bit of adjustment. The Gold Wings and the RT, once you had that a little bit of adjustment, you didn't notice it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I had people be behind me and take photos, and I'm laid up there on the edge of that car tire. But you just don't know. I run less air than you would normally, so it keeps it a little softer on the edges, right?
Nice.
On the FJR, there was a little more effort involved with that, and but it's really, if you're a knee dragger, then it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for miles,
Yeah.
and you don't want to have to stop in the middle of a ride to change tires and those
Yeah.
kind of things, like I rode the 2019 Iron Butt Rally on a GSA. I only got 8,000 miles out of the rear tire, so I had to stop on the clock and do a
Yeah.
tire change. So finding somebody and those kind of things. So
Right.
It's really, to be honest with you, no problem. I've probably ridden 300,000+ miles on car tires on different
Wow.
bikes, and never had an issue, never had a problem.
Sure.
And I don't want to say this, but seemed to feel more safe when it came to stopping and riding in bad weather and stuff like that, right?
Right.
With the more traction, more rubber touching the road stuff. So
Well, for like you said, you've got a lot of miles on bikes, a lot of experience with the maintenance and repair, and you've got considerations as a high mileage rider that your typical touring or sport touring rider or would not have. It's a different set of circumstances.
yeah,
So
yeah, and you just adjust for that, right?
yeah,
If but you want to be where I like to ride, so I don't want to be stopped working on my motorcycle, right?
sure,
So
yeah.
that's one of the things I try to focus on. Right?
Well, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. What keeps you going? I mean, what's your sort of? Do you have a different kind of ride or something that you're thinking about that would be a little bit different, or it's become a hobby that
It's a hobby. It's that I really enjoy. Even today, when I'm thinking and planning a ride, the nights leading up to it, I can't sleep, and I've been doing this a long time. Right? So I'm closing in on 800,000 miles of riding,
Yeah,
and but I'm always looking for something different and unique. And like back in 2012, I rode 1,000 miles in less than 24 hours in the Florida Keys, from Key Largo to Key West, back and forth and back and forth. You cross 400 bridges, right? Because there's 40 bridges each way, right?
wow,
So we have a lake in Florida. It's the biggest lake in Florida, called Lake Okeechobee. 3-4 years ago, I did 1,000 miles around that.
wow,
I've got some really crazy planning of doing 1,000 miles around the Kansas City football, baseball stadium, around the park. I call it the parking lot 1,000. But right now, my next ride I really want to do is ride to the Panama Canal and back. So
right on.
I've got and just to ride down and ride back,
Right.
in less than 10 days. So I've done all the planning. I've got some people down there now, kind of sighting out the border crossings, which is the most complex piece.
Sure.
I rode to southern Mexico a couple of years ago. My plan was to then go to the Panama Canal, but there was some stuff going on in Central America, mainly in Nicaragua, where there was a big uprising, and I knew somebody at the embassy down there, and they said, "Look, you don't need to. You don't need to." So
Yeah.
I rode to southern Mexico. I did 1,000 miles in Mexico and got a really nice Mexico IBA certificate.
Cool.
But I didn't drop that dream of wanting to ride to the Panama Canal, right? So I'm planning that next.
Yeah, so from where you are in South Florida, how far, one way to get you to the Panama Canal, about how many miles you're looking at?
It's 4,500 miles each way.
Okay, wow.
Right? So it's not that bad. 1,500 of it is in the U.S. from here to Eagle Pass, Texas.
Okay.
So there's a day, and then it's another 3,300 miles or so to Panama and back, and 1,400 of it is Mexico.
Yeah.
And then the other 1,400 or so, or 1,500 or so, is from Guatemala to Panama Canal, right? So, so I've got a big plan. I've got a big web page, got it all drawn out. I'm working on the wife right now, so she still know. Years ago, when I told her I was going, she finally agreed, but I had to buy hostage insurance, terrorism. She told me, if they call for money, I ain't got any.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, that's, you're married, you've got got a family. Imagine your kids are probably grown by now, but I guess your wife has come to accept this as part of who you are for a long time. This is not a new thing for you. So
it's not new, but it's still sometimes a conversation because, sometimes she says, well, you already did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I did, but I'm still learning.
Well, that's the thing, is that it can border on, and it's more than just a hobby. It's kind of a passion or an obsession, and if someone else doesn't share it in the same way, it's sort of like when, people are asking like, why do you need more than one motorcycle? It's like, well, you have to ask the question, that sort of thing. So,
Right. Yep.
yeah.
You,
Well,
I don't do just the right. Like I said, I develop weather web pages for all different kind of events. I have software different people use and many different things that,
yeah.
and then every day I get emails and phone calls for how do I do this, what do I do with this,
Yeah.
right? And I try to put all that on my website, but with a full-time job and family, sometimes I get behind on that stuff.
Yeah. So your website, it's gregrice.com, right?
Yep. Yes.
GREGRICE.com. We'll have a link in the show notes. So before we wrap things up, I'm just curious, if you, it's a lot of people again have heard, about the Iron Butt Association. They've seen the license plates where it says world's toughest riders. But a lot of people have never done even the sort of entry level saddle sore 1000. That's a big undertaking for some people. And what would be your advice for somebody who's considering something like that?
First thing is get comfortable on your motorcycle, whatever that means. For everybody, it's a little different, right? When I had Gold Wings, I never had a custom seat. The seat was big. I didn't need anything, and it didn't bother me. I use beads seats for bead rider. For me, that airflow is better than anything else. I tried sheepskin and all that, but get comfortable. Start riding some distance, 100 miles, 200 miles, 500 miles, and be comfortable with that 500 miles and your ergonomics and find a way to keep yourself hydrated, because that's the key, hydrated, and snacks, have a tank bag or some way to have some kind of snacks, power bars, whatever it is that makes you do well, and a way to drink water, whether you have a cup holder or a water bottle and tank bag, whatever. It doesn't have to be something extreme, and just start riding and be sure you like it, because if you don't like it, I don't know, you may suffer through that one and then never do it again, right? And stuff. So, and then be sure to pick a road that you can be successful on. I see people pick all these 2 lanes and back roads and twisties to do their first ride, and then at the end of the day, they weren't successful because it's a hard road for anybody, even if somebody's like me, right? I sometimes will have a couple 100 miles of twisties when I start a ride out of my house, North Carolina, just because it's a necessity. There's nothing until I get a couple 100 miles away, right? But I've been doing it for a long time. So find a road you can be successful on, and it's better to find a road to go out. If you're gonna do the 1,000 miles, go 500 miles out, turn around and come back home. Right. Don't be trying to plan a hotel and all those other things, because it just makes it more complex. And then be flexible with the weather. Don't do your first one in the rain and cold and stuff. Unless you're really, you're going to love it, right? And you're really going to know, right? If you're not used to riding in bad weather, wait until the weather's going to be good. And then you'll be successful. And most people, wow, I want to do that again, right? So.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the one saddle sore 1000 I did, I think it was 1100 and something miles, and less than 24 hours, I was up in Walla Walla, Washington, and had to get home to Ventura, California. And there's no shortcut. It's more than 1,000 miles, no matter what you do. Yeah. But the majority of that route, I ended up on Interstate 5, running the length of California. And so on a major freeway, motorcyclists often think of freeways as being boring, but you can't beat them for the efficiency of not having to stop at traffic lights, not having to slow down going through towns. There are often gas stations right off the road. So again, you're not having to go look for them or something like that. And I don't know that people can fully appreciate that if you're watching the clock, you can burn a lot of time at a gas station. If you wander into the convenience store and you're looking for snacks, or, you're in the bathroom and so forth, you can burn half an hour pretty quickly. But, if you're on the clock to ride 1,000 miles in less than 24 hours, at least that, you got to be efficient. You got to think things through.
Especially at the beginning. Yeah. Once you get good at it and you've got a pattern and you understand different things and stuff, interstates are great. You can cover a lot of miles at a reasonable speed. You don't have to be crazy. Yeah. Riding the interstates, right? I rode across country in 29 hours and 23 minutes. Yeah. On the Gold Wing, right? So, right. So, you can really cover it, and then you get comfortable and you learn that. And for me, the interstates aren't boring. Yeah. The kind of traffic you see out there and the different things that are going on, and you get to see really more than you do back on the back roads and twists, because you're paying more attention to your riding
Right.
and stuff like that, right? So, and then you get comfortable. Then you can start to, expand and do some of these rides where you can include some. Now I find like when I'm doing a bumper and a goal 1,500 miles, I want to include other things in it, right? One time I did 16 stops at different things from cemeteries and unique stuff from roadside America, things like that to make it more interesting and challenging, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like you say, it doesn't have to be a grind. I mean, it's going to be long hours in the saddle, but it can be if you are the kind of person that is, you're okay in being in your own head with your own thoughts. It can be a meditative experience. You can be away from the, your cell phone or your computer and your email or whatever. It's a way to sort of take a break from that. I know that for me is one of the most rewarding things about going on long rides is yeah, just having time to sort of be out and looking at whatever's out there on the road. I mean, it can be
Yeah.
an interstate or a back road. It's if you're a curious person and just to see, like I said, it's the stores that you pass or the vehicles on the road or whatever it may be, or the scenery. It's like, yeah, it can always, some of it's more interesting than others, but there's always something interesting to see no matter where you go.
It's a great time to get out there and get away. I've solved world peace and world hunger on rides, so. Right. And just, get away from the rat race of life. It's if you enjoy it, it's a great way to just, drone out from everything else that's going on, especially today, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. I mean, in today's world, it's a COVID friendly event
Yeah,
because you go to a bathroom and you get gas
yeah,
and you're by yourself, so you're not going to get the virus that way, right? So,
right.
it's it can be really enjoyable. It really can. If you plan, prepare for the elements, know what's ahead, and you like riding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if people can be honest with themselves, I mean, there is the concern that some people, especially if you're doing a lot of hours at night, is there can be fatigue. People have got to be honest with themselves about what their state can be. And the weird thing is, one of the byproducts of fatigue is poor judgment. So people have just
Yes.
got to,
Yep.
like you said, that's why if you've got a plan, if you stick to your plan and you're not trying to innovate or what you're doing or make it up as you go along, then if you deviate from that plan and something seems like it's going, hey, this might not be working out, hey, take a break, get a hotel, do whatever, and
Yeah.
try it again another time. So yeah.
Yeah. Tomorrow's another day because you want to be there for tomorrow to try that other day, right?
Right,
So that's the
right.
key, right? Is know what you can do, and the more you do it, the more you know what you can do, and most likely the more you can do it, right? As you gain more experience and you learn more things. But for me, getting comfortable, I have like handlebar riders on my GSA. I have two sets, two kinds, and I have the rocks and another kind, and it makes me, I mean, effortlessly riding down the road. I have a Russell custom seat, so I'm like, and then I block all the wind and weather I can, and it just I'm more comfortable, so I'm more alert, pay attention better, and then I can cover more miles.
Sure. Awesome. Well, hey, Greg, you've been generous with your time. It's been enjoyable to, like I said, I'm always fascinated by long distance riding and those that have really, you've accomplished a lot doing rallies and rides and so forth. And thanks for sharing your experience and ideas and advice with our listeners.
Yeah, please, anytime. That's another part that I love, helping people figure out how to do stuff, right? So, and I always let people contact me anytime.
Awesome. Well, like I said, you can go to gregrice.com. We'll have a link in the show notes. He's got a lot of great information in there about long distance riding and some of his certified rides and so forth. So yeah, go check that out. Again, thanks for your time, Greg. And for the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, I'm Greg Drevenstedt. Thanks for listening and keep the rubber side down.
Thank you, Greg. Have a great day.
If you've enjoyed listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, please subscribe, leave us a positive rating, and tell your friends. We also encourage you to visit ridermagazine.com, where you can get the latest in motorcycle news and reviews and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can also subscribe to print and digital editions of Rider Magazine, which is published 12 times a year. Thanks again for listening.